Ankin Ma'at, how are you? Welcome to Kemetic Ascension, brought to you by the Shrine of Ma'at. Today is, wow, April, what is the date today?
Ninth.
The 9th, huh? April 9th. It seems like April is moving quickly already. April 9th, 2023. Welcome once again to Kemetic Ascension. You know that in a few moments, I am going to ask you to begin by telling us how long you've been part of Kemetic Ascension and also where in the world you are. Where are you on the back of Geb? Please let us know. You may notice I'm a little out of breath. I ran down the block and ran back up the block to go do something. I'm here. I'm hoping that you are here. Thank you once again. I know that there's so much that you could be doing today. And for those of you joining us, I know that you are probably joining us, and many of your family and your friends are either celebrating Passover or Easter. Probably in our community, more of the folks that we know are celebrating Easter. And so today is going to be a very interesting day. If you are not Christian, if you are part of the Kemetic community, it tends to be an uncomfortable day sometimes, depending on how your family or the folks around you behave. And so today we're going to also talk a little bit about the Kemetic origins of Easter. We often talk about this at this part of the year because in many ways this is the most important day in the Christian calendar, and so many of our family members, our friends, the communities around us are part of the Christian community. So hopefully we'll give you a better understanding by which to understand the celebration and to have some discussion, respectful discussion about it today. So with that, do we have any folks who have responded, Anika?
Yes. We have JMO X. Please tell us where you're from.
Ankin Ma'at.
Key Life Productions.
Yes, that's Brother Sakem. Good, hey, peace, Brother Sakem. Hope you're holding down Philly.
We have our Jati out in Phoenix.
Ankin Ma'at to send Tehuti Forever, also known as William Humphrey. Ankin Ma'at to you.
We have Tanisha Bates from Kansas City, Kansas.
Ankin Ma'at, I think that's a new name.
Mm-hmm. Sinette Cheryl out in DMV.
Ankin Ma'at, one of our full members. Ankin Ma'at to you.
We have Godman. Tell us where you're from.
Ankin Ma'at.
Shadone. I recognize the Facebook name, but I don't remember who that is. Let us know who you are and where you're from.
Ankin Ma'at.
Godman is from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Ankin Ma'at.
Tanisha Bates says, yes, this is very uncomfortable.
It can be.
Mm-hmm.
It can be.
We have Send Jason out in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Ankin Ma'at to you, my brother, out in Lincoln, Nebraska, holding it down. Ankin Ma'at to you.
Noble Lloyd Lithcott, excuse me. I've been watching for 4 years from Brooklyn.
Ankin Ma'at. Oh, you're nearby. You're not far. You're still in NYC. Good. Ankin Ma'at to you.
Okay. JMO says he's from Wrightsville, Georgia.
Ankin Ma'at. Ankin Ma'at.
Okay. So that's Sandra from BK is with us.
Ankin Ma'at to you. So that's Sandra, one of our full members, right? Is that Sandra?
This is Sandra Sidra.
I don't know. She's the full member. I think it's Arrington is who I'm looking for, right? Ankin Ma'at to you either way. Ankin Ma'at.
Yeah, Shahid Douglas.
Ankin Ma'at, someone who's been with us before. Ankin
St.
Ma'at.
Louis. And Shadon is from Brooklyn. Or it says Brooklyn to the fullest. We have Heru Asar Ankh Amunra from Dallas, Texas, with us for 4 years.
Ankin Ma'at to you. Ankin Ma'at.
We have Divine Crow from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Ankin Ma'at.
Let's see. Tahuti Ma'at Sirius from Wichita, Kansas, with us for 3 years.
Ankin Ma'at to you. Ankin Ma'at, one of our regulars. Ankin Ma'at.
Oh, Shadon. Oh, yes. Okay, from our 2021 trip to Kemetic.
Oh, Ankin Ma'at. Yes, we know you, Queen. Ankin Ma'at to you. How are you?
Yes. We have Boss Trucker. Said, let's get him, Brother Jabari. I need good talking points.
Uncle Ma'at.
Rhonda Brown, hey, how you doing? Traveled with us as well, 3 years. From Parker Heights, Texas.
Uncle Ma'at to you. Uncle Ma'at.
Jack Napier from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Or Napier.
Uncle Ma'at.
Oh, Tanisha Bates wants to know, what does Uncle Ma'at mean?
Uncle Ma'at means, you can take it two different ways, right? Ankh is the symbol for everlasting divine life, perhaps the most important of Kemetic symbols. And so this is the Ankh, right? And N means kind of an or in, depending on, you can say M or N. Some people say Ankh M Ma'at, some people say Ankh N Ma'at. At is a symbol of divine balance, which is personified by a beautiful woman with a feather on her head. And so when we say Ankh and Ma'at, in some ways you are saying to the person that you are attempting to live your life in divine balance. That's really what we're saying. And for a very long time, folks who sort of are in the lineage of the Shrine of Ptah, the shrine that our elder, the person that brought us into the Kemetic community, Baba Heru, well, the person that has been our strongest guide in the Kemetic community, because I actually had been part of the Kemetic community earlier, but really didn't find a home until I came to the Shrine of Ptah with Baba Heru, Ankara, Samadse Ptah. We used to just say Hetepu, which kind of means blessings or offerings of peace. And I guess it's a few years ago now, he suggested that folks in the Kemetic community could greet each other with a message that would mean a little bit more as we were going about our day. So we began saying Ankh and Ma'at. So you'll hear that quite a bit. Okay. Was that a long answer for a short question?
It works.
Good.
Sandra said yes, Arrington. So it's a different name for her on Facebook.
Oh, so that is our Ankh and Ma'at to you, Sinette.
We have Jamal Nielsen from St. Croix.
Ankh and Ma'at. St. Croix might be the furthest place away right now.
We have James Smith. There's Adalites from Las Vegas.
Ankh and Ma'at to you. That name sounds familiar. Perhaps I've met you. Ankh and Ma'at.
Let's see. Brandon Moore. Good to see you.
One of our full members. Where's Brandon from again? Did he tell us again? Ankh and Ma'at to you, Sam. Yes. He's quite a distance away. Mm-hmm. He's quite a distance away. And I know he travels extensively. So I wonder where the last place he's gone is.
Mm-hmm. That's where we are for now.
Ankh and Ma'at to you all. Ankh and Ma'at to you all. I'm assuming that there will be other people joining, but keep in mind that I'm sure that some people are navigating. Like, for example, today after our services, I'm going to go to my mother, who is having dinner, Easter dinner. I've made a commitment that whenever my family gathers, I will be there, whether they are gathering for something that is congruent with my spiritual tradition or not. I realized long ago that it was one of those times that in my busy schedule, I still got to see my nieces and nephews and to be able to really be part of the ongoing story of my family. So I go regardless, even though they've asked me a few times over the last day or so, are you coming? Are you coming? Are you coming? Because they know that Easter can be a little unusual for someone who isn't celebrating the so-called resurrection of Jesus. So that's going to be an interesting thing. And in fact, running down the block to go grab something from the car meant that everyone there was saying, "Happy Easter, brother." One older lady was waiting at the street corner. And when I walked across the street, she looked at me so diligently that I thought, should I be helping her across the street? When I got to the other side, she said, "Is that what you wear for Easter?" So she was watching me the whole way, wondering what the heck was going on. And so we had a brief conversation. So Ankh and Ma'at to you all who are the practitioners of African spirituality. Really, the key to a day like this is to make sure that you're not beating up the people who love you, right? These are people who love and care for you, the people who are in your corner when you need someone in your corner. So don't beat them up. But that doesn't mean that you cannot educate, that you cannot have respectful conversations that help them understand the context of a day like today if it comes up. I'm not suggesting that you end up at dinner chastising people. I'm not saying that either. But I am saying that if necessary, it is helpful to be able to give folks context so they understand what is actually occurring. And I would argue that the celebration of Easter is, it has many, many, many Kemetic antecedents. Many, many, many. In fact, most holidays have Kemetic antecedents. Now, I'm sure that there will be some people who disagree with me, and that's fine. Respectful disagreement there's nothing wrong with respectful disagreement. But part of the other challenge around a day like today is that people often don't think they need to respect your spiritual tradition, because there are so many people who are Christian in our community. They may not say it this way, but they'll often say to you, well, what's wrong with you? And you may even wonder sometimes, well, what's wrong with me? It was good for grandmama and grandpapa. It was good for the OGs. Why am I different? I think that I'll talk to you a little bit about a perspective on that might be helpful today as well.
So Sunette Cheryl says, my response to Happy Easter today is, thank you on this day. I'm reminded that the only one that can save me is me. She says, she usually says it to those who no longer practice Christianity. She's not disrespectful or insensitive.
Yeah, it's a little tough, Sunette Cheryl. I'm gonna go to my family's house, and my nuclear family has gotten used to me, right? They've gotten used to me. But often I'll have other family members stop by, and sometimes they think that the words they're going to say are going to bring me back to the church. I have been outside of the church for over 30 years. I guess I can consider myself no longer Christian in 1990. So think about how long that's been. We're talking about a long period of time, y'all. But occasionally I have one of those family members. Sometimes they're like extended family members that come and they think that they're going to speak the word of Jesus. I'm going to go, oh my goodness, I have seen the light. That just doesn't happen. Because one of the things I say to them in my mellowed state is I say there's nothing wrong with recognizing that we are stronger, that we do not end with death, right? But the reality is there were individuals who brought that message into the world thousands of years before anyone ever called the name Jesus, Yeshua, any of the names that you can think of, any of them, for thousands of years. This is an African practice based on a fundamental African understanding of the world. So, in that sense, I take no issue with the concept of resurrection and with the idea that those people who we loved have not completely dissembled. They're not completely gone after their death. However, I think the story, the historicizing of a particular story can sometimes be problematic, particularly when connected to the stories that we hear during this period, right? Because this whole period is more than just the resurrection of Jesus. More on that in a second. Nika saying you're going to get to the teaching. Could you please move on? Yes, she's right. She's right. So with that, I think we should go ahead. Once again, Ankh and Ma'at to Kemetic Ascension from the Shrine of Ma'at. Let's go ahead and begin the way that we have been taught to begin. Begin the way that our elder has begun these traditions for these gatherings, any important gathering, for decades upon decades. And that is with the ceremony, the ritual that we call the opening of the way. So we want you to stand, and then we'd like for you to put your left foot a bit further forward, almost like you're about to step off. And then you're going to place your hands in front of you. As you place your hands in front of you, Expose your palms in front of you. I'm going to say to you, if you simply close your eyes and do this at any point in your day and attempt to wall off the senses that we often use, the sense particularly of sight, smell, and hearing, you're going to notice that you are able to feel energy in this manner. Some of it is energy that radiates. So in some ways, you're using the sense of touch. But as you dig deeper, you will realize that you are using a much more authentic and critically important sense. So this will allow you to do that. But then our Kemetic ancestors would reach their left hand a bit further forward and have their right hand a bit further back. And their right hand could be lower than their left hand as well. This is called by the modern folks the position of adoration. It is the way that we both give and receive energy from those around us. So with that, now we're going to do the ritual known as the opening of the way. You're going to take a deep breath, chant the word Ankh, and then follow us. For those of you who are watching from wherever you are, know this is not theater. Get up and do it with us. Okay? Let's begin.
Anetrak in Bedhet.
Anetrak in Bedhet.
Nuke in Bedhet.
Nuke in Bedhet. Anetrak Happy.
Anetrak Happy.
Nuke Happy.
Twalwinter.
Twalwinter. Turn to the right.
Anetrak Serket.
Anetrak Serket.
Nuke Serket.
Nuke Serket. Anetrak Keb Senu.
Anetrak Keb Senu.
Nuke Keb Senu.
Nuke Keb Senu.
Twalwinter.
Twalwinter. Anetrak Ast.
Anetrak Ast.
Nuke Ast.
Nuke Ast. Anetrak Amset.
Anetrak Amset.
Nuke Amset.
Nuke Amset.
Twalwinter.
Twalwinter. Anetrak Neat.
Anetrak Neat.
Nuke Neat.
Nuke Neat. Anetrak Dwalmutef.
Anetrak Twalmutef.
Nuke Dwalmutef.
Nuke Twalmutef.
Twalwinter.
Twalwinter. Anetrak Newt.
Anetrak Newt.
Nuke Newt.
Nuke Newt. Anetrak Geb.
Anetrak Geb.
Nuke Geb.
Nuke Geb.
Twalwinter.
Twalwinter. Anetrak.
Anetrak Shoe.
Anetrak Shoe.
Shoe. Shoe. Shoe. Shoe. Nuke Shoe.
Anetrak Tefnut.
Anetrak Tefnut. 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 Nuke Tefnut. Twalwinter. Anetrak Paut in Teru. Nuke Paut in Teru. Anetrak and Boo in Teru. Nuke and Boo in Teru. Twalwinter. Take your breath. Twalwinter. Dwa, 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 dwa. For doing the opening of the way with us. This is the ritual that was brought to us, put into its current form by our elder, the keeper of the Shrana Ptah, the master artisan of the studio of Ptah, Baba Heru Ankh-Ra Samad Se Ptah, the person that has really had a critically important role in our life that I am negligent in visiting. My time has been crazy. But definitely I'm going to try to get to see him this week during spring break. So I am so pleased that you are here with us. Dwa again for joining us for Kemetic Ascension. We would like to actually share with you a Hesi. And you may remember what Hesi is. Hesi is the manner in which our ancient African ancestors galvanized divine energy in harmony, in song, in chanting. In some ways, you can consider it African gospel before there was a gospel. You can consider it sacred song coming from the mouths of the first practitioners of sacred song. And so what I would like for you to do is prepare to hear this Hesse. I want you to take this Hesse with you. You'll find that singing Hesse is powerful. In fact, I don't think I've mentioned this in the last few Kemetic Ascensions. Many of the Hesse that we share with you come from that wonderful couple that is living in Africa right now, the Schaefers. And I want you to understand that all of those Hesse that you've heard can be streamed. They can be streamed. Go ahead and go to any streaming service. It's really available virtually anywhere. And type in Kemetic Meditations, Temple Music Volume 1. If you type in Kemetic Meditations, you should be able to find it. And you're going to see it's the sacred music of the Shrine of Ma'at. And so I'm hoping that you will enjoy them as much as we do. Anika, what are we listening to today?
Ankh Chorus.
The Ankh Chorus. So please enjoy this Hesse and go ahead and try to use it. Don't just take it and listen to it. Figure out how maybe you might be chanting it or singing it as you are going about your daily business. So with that, the Ankh Chorus put together by our wonderful couple, the Schaefers. Beautiful. Unfurl. Certainly that is in divine order. It is a beautiful, beautiful song. That was written, performed, and mastered by the Schaefers. They are just amazing. They are just amazing. And I think that when you listen to that, you would think that they have an entire studio of folks working on this. That couple is so talented that they seem a lot bigger than they are. They're just amazing artists, play multiple instruments, and are just a really a blessing to have in the shrine. So, and I see that they actually popped in. They're probably still in Kemet right now. Anken ma'at to you, dwa dwa dwa, for all of your amazing work. I am sure that the folks in Kemet have almost no idea what to do with you. They are like, this couple is different. We need them. And so just be prepared that they may not want to let you go very easily. They may not want to let you go that easily. And I really get it. I get it that they may not want to let you go that easily, because they I'm sure that they're able to see the artistry that we see when we hear you and listen to the work that you've done. So dua to you once again, and Anken ma'at to you. I also see that one of the members of our Wenwed is on, right? I think I saw Abu Jamar on. He's coming to us from Virginia, I think I saw. That brother is probably performing somewhere, doing what needs to be done with conscious hip hop, doing amazing things. And so let me say Anken ma'at to you, dear brother. It's been a while since I've seen you. We miss you. We hope that your queen and your wonderful family are doing well. I don't even need to say anything about your career, because I see it blowing up. Anika tells me about what's going on Facebook very often. Anken ma'at to you, and blessings to you. Travel safely on the wings of Heru, so that you can go and come and do the work that you've been divinely ordained to do. So with that, I'm hoping that whatever you're doing in Virginia is working the way that it should. I'm sure we're going to hear about something amazing that he's doing in just a little while, because when you listen to him, I think that folks understand that they have in their midst something that is really unique. Not only his talent, but his vision. So Anken ma'at to you. Anken ma'at to you. I think I also heard someone is here from Kenya, right? Mm-hmm. Kenya is the furthest place, obviously, right? We're talking about someone all the way that really is near the Horn of Africa. So that's further than, I think it was St. Kitts and Nevis is the one that was furthest before. So the person in Kenya, I don't remember whether it was a Sen or Senet, but Anken ma'at to the person in Kenya.
Ntemi Thomas.
Say again?
Ntemi Thomas.
Ntemi Thomas. Wonderful. Anken ma'at to you, and welcome. That doesn't sound like a name I've heard before. Ntemi Thomas, are you new? Are you new? Anken ma'at, and welcome to you. And welcome to the rest of our beautiful mother continent that we have not been, Anika and I have not been back to as recently as we would have liked. It's a sore topic, because whenever I talk about Ghana, Anika looks at me like, I thought I would have been there sooner. My schedule is crazy. Not that her schedule isn't crazy now, let's be clear. But my schedule is what is mostly preventing us. Look, she's trying not to look at me. I wish you could see her right now, because she's like, could you leave me out of this, please? It really, we would have loved to have been back in Ghana at the very least. To get the warm Ghanaian sun on us and to really enjoy all those things that Africa has to offer. We'll be back there this summer. And so hopefully some of you, listen, this is like the 9th hour, or should we say the 11th hour? Maybe the 11th hour? Because at this point, if you put in a deposit now, you have to put in a deposit and a bit more, obviously. We want you to pay, because the whole thing has to be paid within the month, right? So, but definitely you can still come with us on these monumental trips that we're taking to Kemet and to Ghana. Anika, I think I heard you saying something.
We have Medu TV from Paris.
Ooh, wonderful. Medu TV?
Medutit.
Medutit TV. Medutit TV, tell us a little bit about what you're doing. Obviously, that is a Kemetic name. You're in Paris. I would love to know what you're doing. Please let us know who you are and what you're doing in Paris. We'd love to connect with other folks who are in the tradition outside of here and here, but outside of here as well.
Now we have Ruby from Ireland.
Oh,
And Militant Bro from Jamaica.
So the folks from outside of the United States are coming in hot and heavy right now, right? Which is furthest? Jamaica is pretty far, not as far as Kenya. Ireland, I still think that might be a little closer
Kenya's
than Kenya. I think Kenya might still be further away. But Ankh and Ma'at to you all from all of the places that you are joining us. And this is probably a good time. In fact, it's probably past due for me to just simply tell you that it would be wonderful if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and give us the thumbs up and go ahead and let other folks know that we are here. Put that link in your social media, or go ahead and tell folks that you should know that should be here to join us today. It is certainly one of the most important things that you can do. Share the link, go ahead and like us, and please, if you are able, also send us donations, because we don't do this for money, but it takes money to do it. So please go ahead and do that.
So Medu means words and Teet means image.
Yes. Teet?
Mm-hmm. Picture or image. That's what
like
it says.
Toot. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's right. So it's right. Okay. Did they tell us what they do? Come on, don't be mysterious. We want to know what you're doing over there with a name. Oh, Teet, it's not TV.
I filmed the Kemetic activities in Paris.
We want to know more about that. Do you have a website? You need to let us know what you're doing. We want to see the Kemetic activities in Paris. Paris is that city that actually, in many ways, is probably one of the most shining outposts of the Kemetic tradition in the Western world. It is named after the great mother of the Kemetic tradition, as the Greeks called her, Isis. Paris comes from the term per Isis, or the temple of Isis. And I know that there are those who will try to argue with me on that. There is nothing wrong with disagreement. There's nothing wrong with you having another position. But please recognize that I would not be saying that from here had I not understood and looked at some of the sources that you may be unaware of. Please recognize that. And if you're unclear about the fact that those people who control Paris saw it as a Kemetic outpost, look at the coat of arms for the city of Paris. Look at the coat of arms for the city of Paris. Is not Ast on the prow of a boat with her Ankh headed to Paris? Is that not the coat of arms, which, by the way, was created by who? Napoleon Bonaparte. So I want you to recognize that I would not say that from here if I did not have the sources, the receipts to say it. Sometimes people challenge Jabari on these sorts of things. If you've seen me on Sonnetter, you know that people often challenge me on those things, and they're often just not aware of what I'm aware of, and that's fine. That's fine. So it's important for us to challenge respectfully and have respectful dialogue. So with that, let's go into what we call the word from the Sebaït. Sebaït is that genre of literature that comes from ancient Kemet that embodies what you could consider the wisdom literature of Kemet. And at every Kemetic ascension, we spend time going through the word from the Sebaït. That means we're going to hear directly from the text. But today, because of the day that we are witnessing, the day that is often known as Easter, you should recognize we're going to do something a little different today. Just a little different. I want you to know that we're going to talk about Easter, particularly because so many of our families spend a lot of time preparing for and enjoying Easter. I know that I grew up in a working class family, right? A working class family. It was challenging for my parents to figure out how to have outfits for all of the kids and the parents for Easter church. And you should know, I grew up in a family that went to church every week, right? We didn't just go on Easter, but there were a lot of people that just went pretty much on Easter. Church on Easter was more crowded than church on Christmas. And to some degree, philosophically, you can understand why. But I think one of the earliest pictures I have of myself by myself, I'm saying not like as a baby being held by someone, is me. I think I'm around 2 or 3. And I'm standing there smiling, and I'm about to date myself. I'm not going to date Anika because she's going to frown, but I'm going to date myself. I'm in Brooklyn, standing with some bell bottoms and a bow tie with this is my Easter outfit. And at that early age, I know my mother and father struggled to make sure I had that outfit and that my sister would have that outfit. And shortly after that, there would be more of us. That wasn't easy. How many of you had your families struggle to make sure you had your Easter outfit so that you'd be able to go to church on this important day? I'm sure that many of you in the chat experienced that. This is an important day in our tradition. And if we live in Harlem, the Shrine of Ma'at is based in Harlem. If you just simply walk to the corner and stand there for 10 minutes, you're going to see a scene like this. You're going to see sisters in their amazing hats, because while amazing hats at church is a regular cultural phenomena in the African American community, you better understand it on Easter. Listen, it's at a completely different pitch. Do you see the sister whose hat looks like it's made of small flowers? Look at her smile. She like, I did it. Look at her smile. Yes, is there a question? Please go ahead.
Why is Easter always on Sunday?
We're going to talk about that. We are going to talk about that today.
Son Jason says it looks like it's Abyssinia.
Which one?
That picture.
Oh, he's good. Son Jason don't even live in New York. That is Abyssinian Church right there. That is Abyssinian Church. The one on the right. That's right. That is Abyssinian Church. That's in Harlem. And, if you look at pictures of Harlem, when Black folks had really made Harlem the one of the Black meccas of the Western world, you'll find this picture too. Look at this picture. So this idea of doing something special in your hair is old. This picture is from the 1930s or 40s, and you can see it's Easter Sunday. Look at the back and you'll see the sign that says Easter Sunday at 8:30 p.m. in room 101. The Esther Bird Brown, maybe? Oh, Reverend Esther, I can't read that first name. Reverend Brown will speak in an Eastern dream. The birth of a new Harlem. No more exploitation, no more mugging, no more police brutality. Can you imagine? This pastor is connecting the ills of our community to Easter. Fascinating. And this picture is a historical document. Look at these sisters walking down the block this way. I'm going to tell you that for a very long time, on Sunday, you could not walk down Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard. That's the street right here, the nearest avenue to us, in anything but your Sunday best on a Sunday. And Easter, that tradition was amped. One day, I heard my cousin, my father was staying at his cousin's house, and his mom knew where he was, but he was supposed to be coming back a little earlier. And he didn't come back early enough, so he was walking across Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard in his jeans and a t-shirt, probably. And by the time he got to his mom's house, home, his mother had already heard that he had walked across Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard in sneakers, jeans, and a t-shirt. And he was in trouble. How she heard that, because he said he was going to take a shortcut. He wasn't going to walk the whole long way around. But that's the tradition that the Black community has fostered. I have heard, Anika is telling me, that our elder, Baba Heru Ankh Ra Samad Se Patah, has entered the room. Can I say Ankh and Ma'at to you, Baba? Please send him some love, some myrrh, some energy. Please send our elder some energy. And you know that some of that energy doesn't just have to be ethereal, energetic energy. You could also send him some ducats. Come on now. Please make sure that you do that as well, because our elder's work is important. Without the work that he has done over the course of more than 5 decades, there is no way that we would be able to be here. His journey is our journey. So Ankh and Ma'at to you, Baba, and please give him blessings and greetings in the chat as well. Okay, let's shift. Let's talk a bit more about Easter. And today's discussion is really about Easter from the Kemetic context. Yes, there is a Kemetic context. You might not know that. There is a Kemetic context to Easter, this most important day in the Christian calendar. First off, let me say, we got to talk about the run up to Easter. What happened on April 1st of this year? You might not know this, but one of the most revered television events occurred on April 1st. You should know that there has been a long time tradition of one of the major networks, CBS, NBC, or ABC, playing the 10 Commandments. The Cecil B. DeMille film with Charlton Heston and Yul Brynner. It's really in many ways a tradition. And so take a look at this article in Remind Online magazine that describes what occurred. This came out on March 24th, and it says, ABC's long-running The 10 Commandments Easter tradition continues in 2023. Every year, this movie is played in the run-up to Easter. And I'm going to say to you that it is significant because the 3 major networks fight to be able to play it. Why would they fight to be able to play it? I want you to know that every year, outside of the Super Bowl and outside of perhaps March Madness, in fact, let me just say it this way. The television event that is not a sports event, that has the highest ratings, is often the 10 Commandments. Did you know that? That's the reason why the networks fight for it. This is an American tradition. Did you know that? Listen to what it says. For the past half century, nearly every year since 1973, around Easter and Passover, ABC has rebroadcast Cecil B. DeMille's Oscar-winning 1956 epic, The 10 Commandments, which draws from the story of the Old Testament book of Exodus about Moses, Charlton Heston's, deliverance from the Israelites from the slavery at the head of the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses II, played by Yul Brynner. Every year. So you should know that in the minds of many people here in the West, Easter is inextricably tied to Passover, obviously. And Passover is inextricably tied to the concept, the idea of the Israelites being enslaved where? In Kemetic. So I'm not sticking you in the middle of this. They already did stick you in the middle of this. This happens every year. every year. And you should know that it is so important in the culture that this year ABC allotted 4 hours and 44 minutes to play the show. Now listen, almost nothing is on TV that long. Almost nothing takes 4 hours and 44 minutes, nearly 5 hours. So you had better believe that to take up that kind of space, there are many people in the United States that think this is important. How did I become aware of this? Because my father would watch it every year when I was a child. My father would watch it. And it was probably then when I first recognized, I remember thinking, and this is something that bothered me in my reading of the Bible as a child, that there was a point where God, the God of the Israelites, decided that he was going to have these plagues visit Kemet. And I remember thinking, well, if this is a problem with the king and with the Israelites, why are the regular people of Kemet the target? Because a plague doesn't really attack the Pharaoh, does it? In this rendition, in some ways, God is a terrorist. They have a problem with the king, and so they attack the regular people. In fact, in the biblical narrative, God kills the firstborn of everything, the firstborn animals. What did that cow have to do with the Pharaoh? The firstborn of the servants. What did the servant have to do with the problem that the Israelites had with the Pharaoh? You telling me that if you're a poor person trying to make a living and trying to figure out how to feed your kids because the Israelite God has a problem with the Pharaoh? By the way, the Pharaoh, who it says his heart was hardened by God. Wait. You're telling me that God made his heart hard to hear the plights of the Israelites, and he's still punishing everyone. Madness. Anika's breathing. She's like, you're going to get in trouble. Somebody going to be upset. Is that what that breath was? I'm telling you. But that's the story that we celebrate in this massive cinematic narrative every year. And you should should I play a small clip of it, or do you think we're going to get booted?
Get booted.
You think so?
I know so.
Well, it's playing here. But look at the production values. Look at that crown worn by Yul Brynner, who's supposed to be Pharaoh. Look at this. By the way, you ain't seeing none but a Tom Who everywhere. Tom Who with long beards and Tom Who with short beards or no beards. That's what you're seeing. And this scene, which is as cheesy as you can imagine, is when Moses throws his staff down and it becomes a snake. And then the magicians of the Pharaoh create snakes, but we see that Moses' snakes devours them because we should understand that the God of the Hebrews is more powerful. Look at this image. What the heck? But I'm going to tell you, if you are a fan of movies and production values and of storytelling and of the amazing sets and costumes, this is interesting. And this is one of the reasons why it exists in the thinking. Look at this. Look at that outfit that the priest is wearing. By the way, you can see they just made this is just a cartoon, right? Look at this. So this occurs in the thinking of people. This idea that the Hebrews were enslaved. And in fact, it goes one further. There are some that make it sound like the pyramids, the Merkutu, were actually built by the Hebrews. Look at this. This one on the left actually comes from one of the highly illustrated books that the Jewish people, the modern Jewish people, read to their children on Passover. Can you see what's being built in the background, by the way? Can you see what's being built in the background? They're not just saying that they were enslaved doing anything. They were enslaved building the pyramids. And of course, on the right, this is a scene from that children's cartoon. Well, not a children's cartoon, it's an adult cartoon, really. But from that cartoon known as Family Guy. Now, I know children watch it, adults watch it. It's certainly barely a children's cartoon. But look at that. Can you see the cruel Egyptians whipping? In both instances, they're whipping. Can you see that? Whipping the Israelites. This concept exists in the thinking of many people. And in fact, you may not know this, but take a look at one of New York's most well-known and well-regarded hospitals. And I'm sure if you go to a hospital that actually has a biblical name, wherever you live, it likely is a hospital that is connected to the Jewish community in some form or fashion. You're going to actually see, this is Mount Sinai, Beth Israel. When you go into this hospital, which is a public institution, what will you see on the doorway? This is what you'll see. What is that? I've asked this question before in Kemetic Ascension. The last time I asked this was last year. Someone should have an answer. What is that is on the doorways in this church, in this hospital? Someone answer me. What is that? In fact, if you live in an apartment building that may be owned by people who are Jewish, you may have one of these in your doorway. What is it? If you go to a restaurant or to a store that might be Jewish, particularly places where people live, by the way, or reside like a hospital or a nursing home, you'll see these on the doorways. What is it? Does anyone have an answer? And let me ask this. I'm not only asking you what is it, who's seen it before? Let's say that. It's on the doorway, in the lintel.
One person says a paper scroll.
A paper scroll for what?
Someone else says a mezuzah.
Mezuzah. Who says mezuzah?
Red Tail 11.
That is the answer. It is called a mezuzah, and a paper scroll is also part of the answer because within this vessel is a paper scroll. What is it meant to evoke? Why am I mentioning it here?
Ronald says a Jewish prayer.
A prayer for what? What is it meant to evoke? No answers yet? Someone has an answer. Let me show you. This is meant to remind us of that biblical story, not just biblical. I can tell you it's a story in the Torah first before it's in the Bible, of the Jews putting blood on their doorways so that the angel of death would pass over their homes and go to the homes of those Kemetic people and kill their firstborn. So the way the angel, by the way, this is an angel coming from from God. You would think that they would have enough understanding to know whose homes they were supposed to enter. But no, they had to actually put blood on their doorways. Anyway, this angel of death would not visit the homes that had the blood on the doorways, and instead go to the homes of those who were not the Israelites and kill their children. Now, I don't know what the murder of innocents sounds like to you, but these are children. They got nothing to do with the beef that the Israelites have with the Pharaoh. This is a baby. And sometimes when I have this discussion with folks in the Hebrew Israelite community, they say, well, it's just the firstborn. Some of them may not be babies. They could be adults. That's their excuse. That's how they try to soften that blow. Oh, some of them might not be babies. Some of them might not be babies. Oh, I guess that makes it better that just a few, that some of them were babies or children or toddlers. But that is what this represents. And you will see a version of this in modern spaces. Has anyone said that they've seen them in the place that they are at?
Mm-hmm. Where their family member was treated.
Yeah. That's where you'll see it. That's where you'll see it. I remember seeing it when I went to see my, in fact, all of my nieces and nephews were born in hospitals that are part of the Jewish tradition. All of them. And as I went to go and see them, I would look at it on the doorway. And sometimes while I was waiting or talking, I would just ask them what they knew about it. It's interesting because most people have no idea. They've seen it. They don't know what it is. They don't know what it is. Fascinating that this connects the Passover period that we are in the Jewish tradition, which then becomes the Easter period. Because remember, in some ways, well, first of all, let me say, Passover is meant to talk about the Passover of the angel of death of the houses of the Israelites. That's why it's called Passover. And this celebration, in many ways, is the celebration for the murder of innocents. Now, look, when I say that, some people are going to say you're offending people who are Jewish. But I'm going to say to you that there are many people in the Jewish tradition that have said this already. And you know what some of the response is sometimes? Sometimes some of the rabbis say, well, this is not a historic event. What? They say it? When Jabari says it, I get flack. It's not a historic event. We're describing the faith of those people in the face of tyranny. And so they've taken the sort of the philosophical meaning away from this mythological story. So, by the way, I want you to know that this is one of the places that has been excavated in Kemet today. What we have done recently in the modern world is excavated those villages of the people who worked on the Miracle 2, the people who worked on the pyramids. And as we've seen these excavations, we can prove that these people were not what? Were not what? Were not enslaved. We know where they lived. We know how much they got paid. We can even tell what they were eating. How can we tell what they were eating? Well, obviously, we can see remnants of foods, and also they have done fecal matter studies. They know what they were eating, and they know that they were eating better than the average person in Kemet. These were not enslaved peoples. By the way, in the actual Bible, it doesn't say that they were enslaved. The person that connects, no, it doesn't say they were enslaved building pyramids. But the person that says they were building pyramids, that they were enslaved building pyramids, is Josephus. That's where it comes from. Josephus is the one that says it. The Bible says that what they were enslaved doing was building the cities known as Pithom and Ramses. By the way, these were two of the store cities. One of them was named for Ramses the Great. This is the reason why they usually connect this concept of enslaved people to Ramses the Great. But I want you to hear something from me. There is absolutely no evidence. Hear what I am saying. There is absolutely no evidence of the Israelites being enslaved in Kemet. There is evidence of Israelites being in Kemet, or those people who we might consider the Israelites being in Kemet at an early period. I'm going to show you what that is, and some of you already know what it is. But it ain't them being enslaved. Of course, you see the story. Once again, you don't have to just look at the 1956 Cecil B. DeMille film. Here's the one that came out. I think this is 2014, if I remember correctly. Either 2012 or 2014. You're going to see another retelling of this. And this one has Christian Bale. Yes, that Christian Bale, who played Batman and also played in American Psycho and was the villain in the last Thor movie. An A-list actor in Hollywood. A-list actor playing Moses again. Playing Moses. and also Edgerton. I can't remember his first name right now. I think Edgerton is Australian. I think they might both be Australian. But anyway, two actors playing Moses and Ramses. So you see that this person in the back here is supposed to be Ramses the Great. And what are they standing in front of? Pyramids. So even in this story, without saying it very clearly, they are saying that the enslaved Hebrews built the pyramids. This is a screenshot of one of the first images of the movie. And you can see that they're trying to situate this work of the Hebrews at the time that the Great Pyramid is being built, that the Great Mirakut is being built, and other things as well. This is a narrative that we've been
How
told.
can you have Ramses involved in that when it's a different dynasty?
Because essentially and this is a really good comment by Anika. She's saying the Great Pyramid is built in what dynasty? The 4th dynasty. Ramses is in what dynasty? The 19th dynasty. We're talking about the distance of 1,000 years, more than 1,000 years. And she's saying, well, how can you put these two things together? Because they put them together. They were put together by people who don't understand the history, and by people who are being disingenuous about the history. And they think that you don't know the history. They don't think that you'll be offended that this story is essentially about the murder of African innocents. The murder of African children. That's what this story is about. Look at Anika's face. She's like, oh, he went there. Yes, I did. That's what the story is about. The only person that I would know that would rail on this more is Bob Abreu, who is in the chat. He's probably going crazy. But honestly, that's what this story is about. It is the celebration of the murder of African children. Because remember, it's not just a celebration of the exodus of the Hebrews supposedly leaving Kemet. It is the Passover. It is the celebration of that part of the story when the angel of death passes over the homes of the Israelites and kills the firstborn of the Kemetic people, even kills the firstborn of Kemetic animals. And the Bible says clearly that it even kills the firstborn of the servants. That is what it says. Let's look at some of what we hear about the harsh labor, supposedly, of the Hebrews in Kemet. This is from Exodus 1, from verses 6 to 13. This is the KJV. This is the King James Version. It says, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And they were grieved because of the children of Israel, and the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All of their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. In other words, they forced them particularly to make bricks. That's the reason why, if you go back to this image really quickly. Oh, there it is. The illustrated image, you're going to see, and it almost looks a little strange. Do you see that they have these bricks here, and they're the color of the bricks that we would use in the Western world today? That's why they put those there, because they're trying to reference Exodus. Doesn't it look odd? It's almost like, what? Why do we have these bricks here? And then the Mirakut in the background built of limestone, because they're trying to specifically refer to brick. That's what this is. That's what this is. So I want you to recognize that this description that we see in the biblical narrative, this is where we get this concept of them being enslaved. And you can look here. This is an etching, and you can see the Kemetic people on top, having them carry this large lion. By the way, that's an actual artifact. I'm not going to go into which artifact they referenced here and which king it belongs to. All of it is an anachronism. Please understand, every single part of this is an anachronism. And when you have a historian looking at it, I can look at it and say, this don't make no damn sense. Why are you depicting the narrative this way? That's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing here. But can you see the whip again? There's the whip. That's Exodus 1, 6 to 13. Now, I want you to look at what biblical historians are saying now. If you have watched Jabari talk about the Exodus, talk about Moses, talk about Abraham, you will know that I have studied this. I've studied this very intensely in the last 20 years, but I've studied this really since before I was in the Kemetic community, because I thought it was peculiar and fascinating. Peculiar and fascinating. And you might not be able to tell because I seem so cool and so athletic that I was a nerdy kid. And so books were my refuge. And when I found something interesting, Anika's try not to have a face. I see her try not to have a face. She said, what? I want you to recognize that at being the person that I am, when I find something interesting, I research it. That was me when I was a kid. I'll never forget being fascinated by World War II. And my mother came in the room because they got a letter home that said that I owed $25 in overdue book fines. By the way, as a poor kid in the 80s, this was a lot of money. So she came in here to give it to me. She said, what are you doing with these books? And when she grabbed the books, she saw swastikas. She said, what is happening? What is going on with my son? I said, Mom, I keep taking out books on World War II. She said, why? I said, because it's interesting. And she was like, what is going on? Why has my son got all these swastikas around? I was studying the Third Reich, and I was studying. I was really fascinated by history then, and that's just who I was, right? Now, why didn't I take the books back? Because I had so many books that I would forget which ones were due, which ones weren't. I was in the hood. Sometimes the sleeve that's supposed to show you what time to take it back wasn't there. All kinds of, listen, that's what happened. That's what happened. Anyway, but listen to what Moore and Kelly say about this period. I want you to hear what biblical historians, this book was written in 2011. Listen to what they say about this. They say most histories of ancient Israel no longer consider information about the Egyptian sojourn. Did you hear what that first part was? The Egyptian sojourn, the Exodus, and the wilderness wanderings recoverable or even relevant to Israel's emergence. More important is that is the fact that no clear extra-biblical evidence exists for any aspect of the Egyptian sojourn, Exodus, or wilderness wanderings. Did you hear what biblical historians are saying now? They are saying we have looked for now over 200 years, and we can find no thread of historicity in this narrative. They've gotten to the point where they don't even think it's relevant to the emergence of Israel. Didn't the Bible say that those people went into Egypt, a different group of people, but they became a nation in Egypt? That's what it says. And now the biblical historians who have been searching for any iota, any scintilla of evidence supporting this narrative, perhaps one of the most important narratives in the Western world, one of the narratives that was celebrated this last week, that is celebrated indirectly today, they have said is not a historical event. This quote here from Warren Kelly in Biblical History in Israel's Past, the changing study of the Bible and history, page 81. This is a good book. You should get it if you can. This story is one that if I went to the church down the block, to Shiloh Baptist on the corner, the largest church really close to us. Abyssinia is right down the way. It literally is a short walk. But Shiloh is right here. It's a few feet from our house. If I went to Shiloh and read this, why, I'd be chased out by some sisters in some beautiful hats. But I want you to know that the historians know this. So why are we playing the Ten Commandments every year? Why is it one of the most highly rated shows? Why? Let's continue. Let's continue. By the way, here's an article in The Guardian. And this one says, the Great Pyramid tombs unearth proof workers were not slaves. The byline says, not the byline, the subtitle says, Egypt's leading archaeologist says 4,000-year-old burial plots with skeletons expose myth that builders were slaves. I wish they didn't use the word myth there, but that's how they described it. And you should understand that they are describing the modest 9 feet deep shafts with dozens of skeletons of pyramid builders, perfectly preserved by dry sand, along with jars of beer and bread for the afterlife. The mud brick tombs were uncovered last week near the Giza pyramids, stretching beyond the burial site first found in the 1990s and dating to the 4th dynasty on the fringes of present-day Cairo. And you should also know that it is also, listen to the next paragraph. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus once described the pyramid builders as slaves, creating what Egyptologists say is a myth propagated by Hollywood films. I want you to know that as you look at this story, you will recognize that this doesn't fit. And listen to what Amihai Mazar, the professor of the Institute of Archaeology at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, not an African-centered scholar, listen to what he says. No Jews built pyramids because Jews didn't exist at the period when the pyramids were built. He's saying this is an anachronism. This is an anachronism. But of course, Dorothy Ressig, the editor of the Biblical Archaeological Review in Washington, D.C., says the idea probably arose from the Old Testament book of Exodus, which says, so the Egyptians enslaved the children of Israel with backbreaking labor, and the Pharaoh put them to work on buildings. So they're trying to say, well, listen, it was buildings that they were working on, not the pyramids. Where is the evidence other than the story of the same people who told you that they did it? Where's the evidence? All we see is anachronism based on anachronism and anachronism. By the way, even saying that they were working in the store cities of Pithom and Ramses is an anachronism. It's an anachronism. This is the challenge that we have. Well, here is the story of the Hebrews in Kemetic. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But you can see this is a recreation of the tomb scene in the tomb of a 12th dynasty official known as Khnumhotep II. And you're going to, he's under the king Senusret II, by the way. This is Middle Kingdom, Senusret II. And you can see here is a redrawing of the image of the Hyksos entering Kemet. The Hyksos were a people that came from Sharuhan, that area that we could call Canaan, or even Israel, who were invited into Kemet during a famine in their land. Does it look like they are being taken into hard bondage? By the way, some of you have seen this image but have not seen the actual image from the tomb. Here it is. Look at this. There's the actual image. There's the actual image. By the way, I find it interesting that in the actual image, the Kemetic people are depicted much darker. And the Hebrew Israelite, the Israelite people are depicted, they're kind of tan or brown, right? So we're not talking about Tammuz per se. But look at the way that they're depicted. We see the word Hyksos here. We even know that in this image, we know that I think his name is Abshah. He is the leader of the Hyksos who come in. So they come in, and in a few short generations, these people are in control of Kemet. They are invited in because they are experiencing famine in their region. And shortly, they will be in control. And in fact, this image is important as well. Who is this? Someone tell me who this is. You can see that it looks like it's mostly a skull. Not entirely a skull. You can probably see there's still some skin there. But can you see all of the holes and the damage? Who is this? And how does it connect to our narrative, our story? Does someone have an answer, Anika? No answers yet? I mean, look at those large gashes in the head. Obviously, this person probably died badly. Who are they? Who are they? And why is this unwrapped skull? You notice the wrappings are at the base? Why is this unwrapped skull important to our narrative?
So Noble Lithcott says second Ray Ray Tao the second, and Jason Holmes says Kamos.
Kamos is the eldest son of second Ray Ray Tao the second. So yes, this is second Ray Ray Tao the second. That's who this is. This is the king. This is the king that is in control of a small section of Kemet during the time that the Hyksos are in control. He's in control of the city known as Waset. And the Hyksos king is offended that they are living it up down there. He sends a letter to him. This is like ancient shade, folks. Because it doesn't directly say, look, you're having so much fun down there, you might be forgetting that I'm in control. But the Hyksos king, a man named Apepi, actually says, your hippopotami are keeping me awake at night. That's the letter he sends to him. Why the hippopotami? Because they were followers of Set. And Set, or Setesh, or Seth, as he was later known, or Satan as that name transitioned through history, actually is also depicted by the hippopotamus, a powerful animal who killed many, many people. By the way, you should know that the hippopotamus still kills a lot of people in Africa today. Still. And so as he sends this letter to this man, second Ray Ray Tao says, you know what? This is ridiculous. I need to find a way to get rid of these people. It is said that his war council disagrees with him. They say, no, leave them alone. They're too powerful. But he believes that native people should be on the throne of ancient Kemet. And he takes his army and goes to battle. And he is almost immediately defeated. That is why his skull looks so bad. It is believed that he was killed by at least 2, if not 3 different war implements. He dies badly. And his body is hastily sahufied, hastily mummified, which probably means that he died on the battlefield. Perhaps he died while he was prone. He was on his ground. Maybe he fell from his horse or something to that effect. But you should know he dies very quickly and badly. Kamos then comes into control after him. And Kamos, this is an image of Kamos, Kamos then gives tribute to the Hyksos and makes them believe that they have learned their lesson. And then after a little bit of time, he surprises them and goes to war to them once again. They killed his father, and now he's after them. So he goes to fight them again. And as he goes to fight them, Kamos has more success. It's believed that he leads this rebellion, this ancient African rebellion, for about 3 years unsuccessfully. But, 3 years successfully, and then he is killed at the end. He dies. And then we see that the next person to lead that region is actually the younger brother of Kamos, the youngest son of second Ray Ray Ta, and his mother, Queen Ahotep. And because he's too young to really be in control, Ahotep is in control on his behalf. And she has an axe to grind, both symbolically and literally. They killed her husband. They killed her eldest son. She gets on a horse and leads the army on her own to continue this rebellion against the Hyksos. She is so successful that she leads the army long enough for her youngest son to become old enough to join her in this battle. And together, they expel the Hyksos. This is the story of the Hebrews in Kemet. Not the story of them being cruelly enslaved by Pharaoh. Not the story of them multiplying and the Kemetic people being jealous of them. Not them working on cities or pyramids or anything under duress. The story is actually they were invited in during a famine. They had no food or sustenance in their own land, and they were allowed to go to their neighbors. And in a short period of time, as poor neighbors will do, they take control of the house. It isn't until it's about 200 years later, actually, you should know, that a rebellion of native Africans expels the Hyksos. And this young child who becomes old enough to fight with his mother, a man named Amos, then after defeating the Hyksos, chases them back to their homeland in Canaan. And he says that he destroys their cities there because of what they did for 200 years in Kemet. This is the story. This is the one that has archaeological support, that has extra biblical support. This is a story that historians know occurred, not the one that you're going to hear about in churches around and synagogues around today. This is the story that actually occurred. Here goes an image of Amos with his wife, Amos Nefertari. She's always depicted with the darkest possible skin. This is them sitting together on their throne. Let's move a little bit further.
So there's a discussion going on about whether you're saying that the Hebrews and the Hyksos are the same people.
Mm-hmm.
There's no word for Hebrews in the Egyptian language. Do you want to clarify what you're doing?
Well, there are several reasons why we say that they're likely the Hebrews. We should say they're the proto-Hebrews, right? Because we don't, in the 200 years there in Kemet, we find not even a little bit of the Hebrew language. So it's possible that the Hebrew language is not written during this time. They are proto-literate, and they're probably the proto-Hebrews. We also don't see any evidence of the Hebrew spiritual tradition either. But so why do we say they're the Hebrews? One, because we know where they came from. Two, because we know where they were chased back to. Three, because they have names like Jacob and Jacobam. These are the reasons why. And a bigger reason. The same person that most people try to use for the historicity of Jesus, for the historicity of the enslavement of the Hebrews, they won't tell you that he's the one that says. We're talking about none other than Josephus. Josephus says that the Hyksos are the Hebrews. So there's several reasons why we should believe that these are the Hebrews before we could call them Hebrews. And this is likely the memory that they have, to be honest, that they have manipulated for their own political support, for their own understanding of who they are, to describe themselves as people who were preyed upon, but were the chosen people. And because of that, they were victorious.
So the question is, aren't Hebrews Africans, and aren't they coming from Ethiopia?
I want to be clear that we have no evidence of the Hebrew people coming from Ethiopia. We know that Ethiopia is one of the earliest Christian churches that is situated and secure on the African continent. But we cannot say that the Hebrews come from Ethiopia. No, we know the Hebrews come from outside of Africa. Does that mean that there were people of African descent? You could argue yes or no. At the very least, we can say that they're not what we would consider sub-Saharan Africans. At least not all of them were. Because we have to recognize that even in the Hebrew understanding of who they are, there were different groups of people. There were 12 houses, right? So there are different groups of people, right? So some of them might have been what we would consider Black, and some of them might not. This conversation around who they were is much more complex. Why do we often connect Ethiopia to the origin of Christianity? One of the reasons why we do is because the Ethiopian church is one of the earliest African churches. And there's also that section in the Bible that says Ethiopia will reach its hands out to the Lord. And so we often connect Ethiopia to being the origin of Christianity. But we should know that Ethiopia gets Christianity under the Emperor Ezana. And that is, Ezana is converted to Christianity by his childhood mentor, who was a Syrian monk, who was part of what we should consider the Roman Catholic Church, a man named Frumentius. So Frumentius is the person that seeds Christianity in Ethiopia under Ezana. Sometimes people get upset when I say that in my community, but that's the historical record. You should look to see how, and I'm not saying that the person that asked the question is going to be upset, but I want you to understand that's where it comes from. That's where it comes from. But I would argue with you that the Jewish tradition and the Christian tradition do have their origin in Africa, but they have their origin in the Kemetic narrative. That's where they come from. That's where it comes from. I know that I was told when I was younger, before I was reading history, that the Ethiopians had the original Jewish and Christian tradition. That is a manipulated understanding. The tradition of the Hebrew tradition and the Christian tradition both could be considered greatly influenced and have their origin on the continent of Africa in Kemet, not in Ethiopia. So, and if you're confused about the Ethiopian narrative, look for Ezana. By the way, his father is Osanas. This happens in the fourth century of the Common Era. The 4th century of the Common Era, somewhere after the year 300 CE. So you might know AD, but CE and AD are the same thing.
So there's another question.
Yes.
How did the Black Israelite movement tie into this?
Well, the Black Israelites view themselves as the Israelites that were enslaved in Kemet. It's just that simple. Whenever you hear about the Israelites or the Hebrews in the Bible or in the Torah, they view that as their direct story. And so that's how they tie in. The same way that other people who follow the Torah or people who view themselves as the original Jews or connected to the original Jews are connected, is the way they're connected. And so I end up having lots of disagreements with them around this particular story. Yes, Anika.
So it says, likely believed proto-pre-literate, and after how many hundreds of years in another nation scattering around during wars and supposed enslavement, how or why would that be the same people?
How would that be the same people? Well, I answered that question already. The reason why we say that these are the Hyksos, I'm going to give you once again 4 reasons. First of all, because we know where they came from when they came to Kemet. We have a record of where they came from. And we know where they returned to. We have a record of where they returned to. Second of all, we also know that their names are clearly what we would consider Semitic names. Some of the people who are in control, 2 of the kings are 2 of the Hyksos kings, after they take control of Kemet from the native people, are Yaakobam and Jacob. If those don't sound to you like Hebrew names, like Semitic names, I don't know what sounds like it. And there's another reason. The other reason why we say that they are likely the Proto-Hebrews is because that is what the most influential Jewish historian says. Herodotus is the one that also says that the Hebrews are the Hyksos. There's several reasons why we say that. Okay? Yes.
Didn't the concept of angels originate in Zoroaster?
It depends on what you consider an angel. Depends on what you consider an angel. You can clearly say that the traditions of ancient Iraq, I would say probably Sumer, I would say before I'd say Zoroaster, has this concept of emissaries being sent by the divine, but we see the same thing in the Kemetic tradition before that. So it depends on what you consider an angel. If you give us a definition, then I'll see if I will agree with your assertion. Are there other questions or comments?
Can you tell us more about the Orthodox Tewahedo biblical canon?
That is the I'm not going to go into it extensively, but the Tewahedo Church is the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and you should know that it is founded by Izana with assistance from Frumentius. And by the way, when Frumentius actually sees that the seed of Christianity is taking hold in Ethiopia, he goes for assistance. He goes to folks for assistance in cultivating that seed in Ethiopia. Where does he go? He goes to Rome to get assistance. So clearly we see the hand of Rome already involved in that church as well. Now, you should know that there are times that the Roman church later says that they disagree with how the Ethiopian church is doing things, and the Ethiopian church tends to ignore them. So I'm not trying to say that they are the Roman church, but I am saying that they have their origins in the Roman church. Does that make sense? In addition to this, you should know that Izana, after becoming a Christian, what is one of the first things he does? He heads over to Merowe, which is then the capital of the Nubians, of the Cushites, and he sacks it. He destroys it. He raises the earlier tradition that we see in Ethiopia, which is closely assigned to the Kemetic tradition. He destroys that tradition in Ethiopia and establishes Christianity. That's what happens. Yes, Anika.
So Baba Heru says, according to Kendra Nagast.
Kebra Nagast.
Okay.
The Book of Kings of Ethiopia. Go ahead.
Did not the Cushites convert to Judaism by Makeda, queen of Sheba, due to her son by Solomon long before Izana?
That's a really good question, but I'm going to say to you no and no. That's a mythological story. And one of the reasons why I'm going to say no and no is, first of all, we have no evidence of a literal person, the Queen of Makeda, or Belkis, or all the other names that you'd like to use for her, the Queen of Sheba. We have no literal evidence for her. She might be semi-legendary. Perhaps she's a literal person, but we don't have evidence of her being a literal person. And we should also recognize that that story has Makeda go to Jerusalem and sleep with Solomon. And then Solomon's son, when he becomes old enough, Menelik, his name is, he then goes to see his father. And his father is so enamored with his son. By the way, I think he has a ring or signet that Solomon gave to his mother when his mother went back home. So when he goes back to see his father in Jerusalem, he brings the signet so that the Solomon would know who he was. And then Solomon gives him eventually gives him the Ark of the Covenant. He wants him to stay there to be the head of those people. But Menelik says no, he has to return home, and that's the story that's told. I'm going to say to you, there is no Solomon. That Solomon is a mythological character. We don't have any evidence of an actual king named Solomon.
There's a lot going on here.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Come with it. Come on, folks. Come with the question.
But can you share some of the sources you used to map out the history of the Hyksos and Kemet and how they were driven out? I'd love to look more into that history.
Yes. One of the things you should look at is called the victory stele of King Amos. You can look at the archaeological digs around. You can also, I showed you sources, by the way. You can also look at the description of the Hyksos in the tomb of Khnum-Hotep II under Senusret II. Senusret II was a king. Khnum-Hotep II was the noble. Look for that tomb where you see the Hyksos. They're going to describe the Hyksos. That's one of the things that you should do. And there are actually a lot of secondary sources that describe this history, tons of them. There's descriptions even in the Chronicle of the Pharaohs of what occurs there. There are a number of sources. By the way, if you want to know more about Ethiopia, there's a book that gives you good history on Africa overall. It's called Africa, Origins, African Origins to 1900 CE, by Falola, Falola. It's the book I use in my class that I teach at Hunter College. That's the book on the history of Africa. That section on Ethiopia is very helpful. By the way, you should also know, I know Baba talked about Kush. There's also something else that happens that becomes difficult for historians. Usually when people talk about the Nubians, when the Greeks begin to call people in Africa Ethiop, which comes from the idea of having a burnt face, they were saying they were black people. They're referring primarily to what we would consider that area, the Nubians in Sudan today. They're not talking as much as the modern day city of Ethiopia, the modern day nation of Ethiopia, which used to be Abyssinia as well. So I want you to recognize that there is some confusion that we're talking about two different places. Are we talking about a place that exists in modern day Sudan or a place that exists in modern day Ethiopia? Some of that becomes confusing because when we talk about the Ethiopians in the ancient record, they're called different things as well. That's part of the confusion here. Other questions?
I don't know if I can keep up.
Folks, you should take my class on the history of Africa. I am going to teach it publicly. I'm teaching it on the college level right now. I have a class on Kemet, a class on Nubia. I'm going to announce dates for them. And I also am going to be teaching my class on African history publicly as well, not just on the university level. So you can have access to all of the sources, all the narratives. You will be able to understand the history of this.
So going back to the question about angels, he was referring to winged beings.
Oh, you know that you see winged beings in the Kemetic tradition very early. I mean, Ma'at is winged, Ast is winged, Heru is winged. I mean, we see Heru winged. This is the Heru Behudet. Winged beings, the first winged beings you're going to see is in Kemet. You're not going to see them earlier. You're going to see them before you see them in the Zoroastrian tradition is later. I think you're talking about the tradition of Sumer. The tradition of Sumer is in the same place as the Zoroastrians, but the Zoroastrians are later. And really what you're asking is, does it come forth in Sumer or Assyria? We see winged beings in Assyria, but that is much later. We see them first in Kemet. Okay,
let's try to get through this. Are we finally ready to retire the word Tamhu in regards to European peoples? The Nubians were also called Tamhu, and their orientation was from the south.
Source. Okay. I'd love for you to show me when we see the Nubians. Usually the Nubians are called Nehesi. And I want you to look at the description of who the Tamhus are, along with their pictures on the Book of Gates. Look at the image in the tomb of Seti II. You're going to see the image in the tomb. I want to say it's Ramses 12 also has it as well. They actually have an image of the people, and I say, these are the Tamhu. They're the light-skinned folks, not the Nubians. They have the Nubians in that image too. They're called Nehesi. So I know it's usually Reggie, Brother Reggie Madry that says that. But I want you to know that for the most part, they weren't necessarily talking, the Kemetic people weren't talking about race as much as they were about nations and about cultures, right? So I want you to look at, usually when we see the people known as Tamhu, we're not talking about the Nubians. The Nubians are called by many other names. So we have to be clear about that and recognize that as well. By the way, when Reggie was challenging me on, I said, "Are you familiar with the image of the Tamhu in the tomb of Seti II? You will never see him stutter more." sometimes people think I'm not looking at sources. I mean, what do you? We can have a disagreement as to who they are, but we're talking about people who are they may be Asian, Western Asian folks. That may be who we're talking about, more than the Greeks or the Romans, who are really the people that we could probably consider Westerners or white people. Notice my air quotes. Please see my air quotes. In the ancient world. So if there is a lack of specificity in my use of the word Tamhu, it's a specificity that occurs in the difference between the Western Asians and perhaps the Greeks and the Romans, rather than, by the way, the Greek and Roman Empire also overlap that area as well during their heights. So there is some lack of specificity. There is no word for white person, really, in the African tradition. Why would we call them white? They're not really white. That's how we depict it now. They're the ones that created those stories, right? So I'm trying to come as close as I possibly can to the people that we might be referring to in a particular region in the ancient world.
Doesn't it just mean foreigner?
No, it doesn't mean foreigner. It doesn't mean foreigner. There are words for foreigner. That's not one of them. Okay.
Isn't there a difference between Tamhu and Tehenu? Tehenu.
Yes, there is. You're talking about Tejenu. Sometimes it's called Tejenu. Tejenu is one of the areas. I didn't tell you that the Hyksos were Tamhu, if that's what you're thinking.
No, this is a different person.
Yeah, but the Tejenu is one of also, well, that's a whole other question I'm not going to even get into. But you're talking about the Tejenu sometimes. Yeah, I'm not connecting the Tamhu and the Tejenu, but you should know that as we talk about different groups of people over the course of 3 millennia, there isn't one-to-one specificity on who is being referred to. I'm talking about generally who are we referring to, because you are going to see some things that seem different than what you see in other periods. But if you look at all the references of the Tamhu, who are the Kemetic people referencing? Who are they referencing? Okay, yes.
Can you talk about the Coptic Christians in Egypt today?
The Coptic Christians are a very early Christian church, earlier, by the way, than the Ethiopian church. The Coptic Christian church is earlier than the Ethiopian Christian church. But this is one of the earliest creations of Christianity in the entire Christian world. In some ways, you could say that the Coptic Christian church is it is either older or a contemporary of the Roman church. So it's a very early church, and it still exists there today. Some of the native people end up practicing a form of Christianity that we can consider the Coptic church. It does have some elements that are left over from the Kemetic tradition as well, including its liturgical language. The Coptic Christian liturgical language is a version of the Mennonite. Okay, let's move. More questions?
I think we're good.
Okay. I want to answer your questions. This is a dialogue. By the way, have I harmed anyone in the chat? Is anyone offended by anything I said? No? We're just having a discussion? Because I'm not trying to harm anyone. Okay, let's move.
They're just making suggestions as to how you can teach this, like using Discord or what's that thing on YouTube?
To teach what? You mean
Patreon.
Ascension?
To teach classes.
Oh, I teach.
Using Patreon to make money and Discord to be able to communicate with
people.
They
just trying to say, can you do it free and get paid some other way? That's what you're trying to say. No, when you take the class, there is a cost for it. Using Patreon would mean that folks would make donations for the classes. But the way the classes usually work is that you enroll in the class and you have live lectures by Jabari Osaze. That's how it works. They're recorded as well, so if you're not able to be in a live lecture, you can listen to the lecture a little bit later and do your homework as well. But that's how they work. That's how I've taught my Kemetic history class for many years now. Man, I must have been teaching the Kemetic history class for nearly 20 years, maybe 18 years now. I'm going to teach it again this year. I've just been so busy with my own studies because I've gone back. You may have heard to obtain another master's degree, my third master's degree, because I'm en route to a doctorate in history. And so I'm doing a master's degree on the history of Africa and the African diaspora. At the same time, I'm teaching an African history course for the first time at Hunter College. I am busy. So that's the reason why you haven't seen those classes yet.
So that leads into the question of, when does initiation begin?
Initiation will probably begin in 2 weeks on a Monday. You're going to get an announcement soon. I want to talk to the priest first. So I'll have that conversation with the priest this week, and you'll see an announcement by Wednesday of this week. Okay? It's delayed. Initiation is definitely delayed. Part of it is partially delayed because my schedule this year has been absolutely a beast. That Anika can tell you, it's a beast. It's a beast.
There's so many questions.
You mean too many to answer?
No, I'm saying, is the Coptic Church, in the Coptic Church, is it true that they didn't believe there was a Son of God?
I don't think I would, and I don't think so, no. There's some disagreements over the nature of Jesus in the Coptic Church and in other places in the Christian world. Is Jesus distinct from God, or is Jesus God? Is Jesus a man, or is he God? Is Jesus both man and God? These are all descriptions that monophysicists and others, that's the term that you're looking for. That's the term when you're looking for descriptions of what you're asking, look for monophysics. But this is the story of, it's so funny. When people ask these questions, I recognize I have read hundreds of books on this topic. Sometimes I find myself grabbing something I read in the 1990s. I've been doing this for a long time. And it's fun. I enjoy doing it, right? And I'm hoping that there'll be more of you that will want to know about it as well. Okay? All right. More questions, or should we move? Really quickly, you should know that in many Christian traditions, the path to Easter begins with that period known as Lent. And Lent starts with Ash Wednesday. You can see here a priest, probably a Roman Catholic priest on the left, putting ashes on a brother in the street. You can see these children, I think that they are I want to say that's Haiti, and they have ashes there. And then this sister down here, this is in the, I don't know what part of the United States, but it's in the United States. And you're essentially seeing them receive their ashes. You might have noticed a few Wednesdays ago that people had ashes on their forehead. You've probably seen this before. By the way, it's more than the Roman Catholic Church. Tell me who else does Ash Wednesday. I want to ask you all to answer that question.
Episcopalian.
You're answering it from your own understanding, right? Anika said, we did ashes too. I wasn't Roman Catholic, right? She went to an Episcopalian school. And you saw Ash Wednesday, right? Mm-hmm. Anika, when I say this on Sonetta, they say, that's because you was a Catholic. And I go, it's more than just the Catholics that did this. Sometimes when Black people want to buffer some of the challenges around Christianity, they try to say all the bad stuff is Roman Catholics, all the good stuff is us. We did something else.
Baptists did too. I think my mom had ashes.
It depends on where you are. But I want you to do some research. Most Baptists, I don't think, do ashes. Yeah, I'm sure you have some answers coming in. Let's continue. Let's look at the origins of this. First of all, this comes from one of the early church fathers. He lived in the 4th, spanning into the 5th century. His name is John Cassian. And he has a book known as The Sacred Writings of John Cassian. He lives from 360 CE to 435 CE. This is what he says about Lent. He says, it ought to be known that the observance of Lent did not exist as long as the primitive church retained its perfection unbroken. In other words, the earliest Christians didn't do this thing called Lent. That's what he's trying to say here. I want you to recognize that Lent and Ash Wednesday also have their origin in earlier traditions. This is what Athanasius says. Athanasius is a very important early Christian father. Earlier than John Cassian, he is the Bishop of Alexandria, because you should know that early Christian church has 3 major centers: Rome, Alexandria, and I'd probably say somewhere around Constantinople. Let's say that is another major center. Take a listen to what Athanasius says. But if I have further deemed it highly necessary and very urgent to make known your modesty, for I should have written this to each one, that thou shouldest proclaim the fast of 40 days to the brethren, and persuade them to fast, to the end that, while all the world is fasting, we who are in Egypt should not become a laughingstock as the only people who do not fast, but take pleasure in those days. What is he saying? He is saying, if you're going to have people fast, good, because everyone else is fasting during this period, but we who are in Egypt, listen to that. The Christians in Egypt are not fasting during this time. So he said, okay, maybe we should fast because everyone else is fasting. And a fast is usually part of this Lenten period. Today, some of what happens during Lent, and I know that my family still does this, they don't eat meat sometimes for all of Lent. But at the very least, on Fridays, they don't eat meat. And what do they consider meat? For me, meat includes fish, but for them, often, it means that they will only eat fish, right? That's what it means for them. No beef, no pork, none of that stuff. And that is how they look at it. But I want you to understand that the church in Alexandria, the Christians in Alexandria, are not doing Lent. Why? Let's continue. This comes from January 1st, 1876, the Ecclesiastical Observer. This is a journal about, it says, devoted to primitive Christianity and biblical truth. In other words, we want people to understand what the early Christians did, not what we're doing now. Listen to what they say. And this is in that same volume, right? That same one that is issued on January 1st, 1876. It says, our state church, like its mother of Rome, is still busy with Lent superstitions. Listen to that. Derived from where? Paganism. That festival of the 3rd or 4th century, now designated Easter, was widely different for the Easter of the Church of Rome and was not known that time by that name. It was called Pesach, or Pesach is how we usually say it today, or Passover. And though not an apostolic institution, was very early observed by numerous Christians in commemoration of the death and resurrection of the Savior. It was, however, not preceded by a Lent. The 40 days abstinence of Lent was borrowed from the worship of a Babylonian goddess, the Yazidis, the devil worshippers of Kurdistan. Listen how they talk about them, by the way. Still observe it. By the way, the modern day Yazidis are being horribly attacked by folks in Iraq today. You'll hear more about them. In fact, the United States involved themselves in a rescue of some of them from a mountain where they were trapped. Let's continue. Humboldt shows that the pagan Mexicans observed a Lent of 40 days, beginning 3 days after the vernal equinox. Are you saying that Lent is connected to the equinox? So you mean that Lent, which is the period that ends in Easter, is something that is dictated by the solar calendar? Let's continue. The pagan Mexicans observed a Lent of 40 days, beginning 3 days after the vernal equinox in honor of the sun. And here's the important part. The Egyptian Lent of 40 days was in commemoration of who? Osiris. This is the Christians telling you that the earliest people to practice this period of Lent, that they are calling it now, this period of fasting and celebration, comes from the celebration of Asar. This is where this comes from. By the way, I'm probably the only spiritual leader that's giving you sources like this, because it's not just coming out of my head. If we are going to reconstruct the Kemetic tradition, we ought to know what we're reconstructing and what its relationship is in aversion or in complementary fashion with the other traditions that are active today. That is why you have some sessions of Kemetic Ascension that are pure practice and some that are more history, because we have to know that if we're doing something, why are we doing it? If we're returning to the source, what is the source? I know that some of you are going to say, this is really history. Yes, it is history today. Yes, it is. Let's continue. Let's continue. Then there's a celebration of Mardi Gras. Did you know that Mardi Gras is connected to this Easter period, this Lenten period? I'm going to go a little faster here so we can conclude. You should know that all of it has its origin in the Opet festival, which could be called the Ipet festival more prominently, so you understand it means temple festival. One of the earliest words for temple was Ipet. So when we say Opet festival, we're talking about the temple festival. You're seeing an image. I believe this one is in the temple that is known today as the Temple of Luxor. Its name was Ipet Resiet. And you'll actually see that this king, I want to say this is probably either Ramesses or, yeah, it's Ramesses. You can see his shen right here. That's Ramesses. And he is actually giving offerings to the priest dressed with images of Heru and of Anpu, carrying the bark that includes the image of the divine from one temple to the next. There was this massive festival that occurred, and people had all kinds of partying. They would stand on the road and watch the boat being walked down, and then it would sail back on the water. And during that time, they had these major festivals. Yes, and they included a lot of ribaldry. That's a fancy word for saying that people got it in during that festival. They would drink. It was a raucous festival that occurred. In fact, if you look later, you see that this festival finds its way into Rome, and they begin to call it Navigum Isidis, because at this point, Isis is connected to the rivers, just as she was in the early world, but they recognize that Isis was connected to bodies of water, particularly also because the tradition came to them from people who were traveling on water. So it's Navigum, also because the ceremony included water and had lots of ships. Do you see the ships in the background here? By the way, this particular one is supposed to be something that occurs at a temple that Anika and I go to. Can you tell what temple this is supposed to be describing?
Philae.
Yes, Philae. Philae. Anika may not consider herself a historian, but she has been doing so many study tours that she just look at the image and say, that looked like it must be Philae. There's a very small number of people on the planet that look at it and say, it looks like it's Philae. She did a lot of study tours, yo. So yes, this is supposed to be at Philae, right? We've come up right on the side of Philae like this, haven't we not? So this is supposed to be the depiction of them practicing the Kemetic tradition after the Romans are in charge. Look at how light these people is. They call it Navigum Isidis and also Carnivalis. Partially Carnis Navalis, partially because the Navalis refers to the boats that are used. Does it sound familiar? They called it Carnis Navalis. That is where we get the term carnival from. Carnival is a Roman version of the Opet festival. It is African. It is African. Isn't that the reason why Black folks love carnival so much? We've been doing it for thousands of years. That's why. You go to carnival in Trinidad. That's why we enjoy it so much. We have been doing it for thousands of years, long before Christianity. We're just doing a lot of the same stuff, and now we're saying it's Christian. But it feels natural to us. By the way, this in many ways is connected to, well, let's talk about Palm Sunday for a minute. I'm breaking down everything that is connected to the Easter period and showing you its Kemetic, its ancient origins. We see an image here of Jesus coming into Jerusalem, right? And to celebrate his arrival in Jerusalem, what did people take and show and wave at him? What did they wave at him? Palms. Can you see them taking branches of palms over here? He's riding in on a donkey. There's a reason why we use palms here. And I want to argue that the palm is connected to the idea of eternal life. That is Kemetic. Why is he riding in on a donkey? Because even the depiction of the donkey in the Kemetic tradition and in the earlier traditions, the donkey, by the way, you should know, we say a lot of things about donkeys, right? Donkeys are very intelligent animals, very intelligent, very intelligent. And because they have a sense of themselves, they're considered to be very stubborn, right? I'll never forget seeing a discussion that a man in modern day Ethiopia, a negotiation a man was having with his donkey. He was telling the donkey he wanted to go someplace. The donkey was saying no. He had to feed the donkey, water the donkey, talk to the donkey. Eventually, the donkey said yes, and then they walked away. And I was amazed. I was like, this guy is having a negotiation with a donkey. How did I know it was a donkey? I was laying on the bed, and I heard, ee-haw. I said, okay, that's got to be a donkey. I opened the window and saw this discussion. By the way, the whole discussion occurred before Anika returned to the room. When she got back to the room and I explained to her what I saw, she was like, no, you didn't. I said, yes, that is what I'm telling you. That's what happened. Anyway, the donkey is often, because of its strong personality and its dislike of being a beast of burden, is connected to stubbornness, is connected to humanity, the urges of humanity. And so when we see Jesus riding on top of a donkey, that means he has control of his divine self. He lives above those things that keep average humans connected to their emotions, their emotional state, to their physical body.
But he's still riding on the donkey's back.
He's above the donkey. He has control of it. Remember, he is a human, but he is more. Right? They're not saying, this is not an encomium against the donkey being a beast of burden. This is saying that he is more than human. And they're waving palms at him because the ancient image of the palm, by the way, this is the Alexameno graffito. And this shows you, this is before the time of quote unquote Jesus. This is the time before we see the images of Jesus crucified. We see a donkey crucified. This is in a cave, and it is carved. You can see that this animal is crucified. By the way, he might even be crucified on an ankh. I'm not prepared to say that yet, but that might be what you're seeing. It's scratched into a cave. So you should understand that the donkey has serious symbolism. In fact, even in Greece, we see a Greek story trying to describe Kemetic knowledge as a story known as metamorphosis. And it is about how the Christians are trying to keep someone away from knowledge that comes from ancient Kemet. And what do the Christians turn this man who was a follower of Ast and of the Kemetic tradition? They turn him into a donkey. And through knowledge of self, he returns to himself. This is called, and it's by Apuleius. So the donkey has serious symbolism. Really quickly, remember that Palm Sunday is that Sunday before Easter because of the description of Jesus coming into Jerusalem the week before he is to be crucified on Easter Sunday. So we see that symbolism of the palm. Today, we even see people get these palm and then they make them into these intricate little crosses. They carry palm. Trust me, on Palm Sunday, you probably want to go so you can get palm. Many of you have probably done this. I know that I did this. Virtually everyone I knew at some point got these pieces of palm that they would carry along with them for many, many years because it was a symbol of what would come for the death and resurrection of their Savior. but the palm was a sacred symbol in the Kemetic tradition. You're seeing a chair. This is actually, I think it's a replica of the chair that you're seeing on the left. But this is it is a replica, because I've seen the original in the Cairo Museum. It's not depicted here. But you're seeing a really good replica, by the way, of this chair that that sits in the Cairo Museum, and it shows the image of the deity connected with eternity known as Heh. Heh. Usually spelled H-E-H. And to be connected to eternity, what does he do? He holds two palm ribs. And it is said that Heh notches the years on the palm rib. So this is a symbol of eternity. By the way, another way that it's a symbol of eternity, at the very bottom of the palm rib, you're going to see the Shen, the symbol of eternity, and the Hekek, or Hek, the frog. Hekat, Hekek. Heket is what I said. Mm-hmm. Same thing. But you're seeing that is the frog on top of the Shen at the bottom of each of these palm ribs. Can you see that? Symbols of eternity. You should know that this chair is something that Baba Heru has meditated on for thousands of days, for decades. And it also is the symbol of yoga skills, the symbol of Yusir Hotep's Kemetic practice of yoga. So I want you to recognize that we have connected ourselves to this symbol extensively in the modern world. But this is also, we see the palm very early. And then of course there is Easter. And Easter is a week after Palm Sunday. And we see that this is supposed to be the celebration of Jesus being crucified and returning 3 days later. This obviously has lots of ancient tradition. The term Easter is not even a Christian tradition word. It comes from either Ishtar. Now, this is a deity that comes from the Assyrians. It comes from Ishtar or Orestra. Orestra is both of them are connected to the spring, by the way. And you can see that Oestra is usually, the bunny is usually sacred to Oestra and to Ishtar. And so this is where we see some of these early traditions being depicted. Oestra is, I think, from the Germanic people. But we see that clearly we're seeing things that we should consider pagan. And this is even a deity that comes to us from India. And we can see the connection that they have to the bunny. The bunny is a sacred symbol in many places. So someone asked me early, why is Easter always on a Sunday? You thought I forgot that question. I'm not that old. I still remember things. Listen to this. This comes to us from the book known as the Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 2116. And it says, all forms of divination are to be rejected. Recourse to Satan or demons, conjuring up the dead, or other practices falsely supposed to unveil the future. Consulting horoscopes, astrology, palm reading, interpretation of omens and lots, the phenomena of clairvoyance, and recourse to mediums all conceal a desire for power over time, history, and in the last analysis, other human beings, as well as a wish to conciliate hidden powers. They contradict the honor, respect, and loving we fear that we owe to God alone. So here it is, the Catholic Church saying, don't be looking in the stars and trying to understand what should happen next. Don't be looking at anything else and trying to understand what should happen next. But you can tell, I'm going to say it is a contradiction. What are we looking at on the left, on the right? What is this image here? What is this image and why is it important? Does anyone know? You're going to see a big contradiction. Where is it? What is it? And why is it there? Any answers? It might take a little while because they might be typing considerably. But here we are going directly to the matter of Easter. And what?
The obelisk.
Some people are saying the obelisk, which is the Greek word for this device.
The Tekken.
The Tekken, which is the ancient African name, the Tekken.
Vatican.
Yes. This is not in the Vatican, but yes, there is one at the Vatican. This is in a church in France. Why is it there? Because you should know that the highest level priests would use the Tekken to study the movements of the sun to tell when Easter should be. Easter, listen carefully, Easter is always the first Sunday after the first full moon, after the vernal equinox, even today. Did you hear me? They done told you you shouldn't look at the heavens to try to figure anything out. They've told you that astrology is wrong. But at the same time, Easter is decided to be the first Sunday after the first full moon, after the vernal equinox. So it is both solar and lunar. That's what Easter is. So wait a minute. If Jesus truly resurrected, why are we looking at a day that is connected to the resurrection of the sun and the movements of the moon? Why don't we just use the day that he resurrected? Why? Because this is astrotheology. Astrotheology. That is what the ancients did for such a long period of time. And that is what they were said that they were frowned upon by the early Christians about. But the reality is that is the basis of much of Christianity. Do as I say, not as I do. And this very Tekken in this church was used to dictate when the equinox would be. That's what you're seeing. And of course, there is that one that as is at the Vatican. It is the most popular gnomon. A gnomon is a large device used to study the movements of the sun, but it is an authentic Tekken taken from Kemet, put at the center of the Roman Catholic Church. In fact, if you see this area here where the statues are, that's where the Pope lives, right there. When he opens his window, he sees the Tekken. What is the Tekken? The Tekken is symbolically the reconstructed Henonen of Asar. The reconstructed Henonen of Asar is a symbol of his resurrection. Okay, wait a minute. Maybe you didn't hear what I said. Let's break it down further. For those of you who did not hear what I said, the Henonen is the penis, the phallus. If we were in another tradition, you wouldn't see pastor talking about penises in church or in the synagogue or in the mosque. But we're Kemetic followers. And we don't think that your human body is dirty. It's something to be embarrassed about. I want you to hear what I am saying precisely, Kemet to you. This is a symbol of the penis of Asar, which was recreated by his wife so she could take his seed in and give birth to his son. It is a symbol of his resurrection. And every day that the Pope arises and opens his windows, he looks out the window and sees the symbol of the penis of a black deity. That is what he does. And at the top of that Henonen is a nice little cross, because one of the seeds of Kemet is Christianity. I'm telling you, they will hide it in plain sight. And then the bishops, do you notice the lines that come from the Tekken? They will stand here to judge when Easter should be. If Easter is not Kemetic, why are you dictating when Jesus is resurrected using Kemetic symbols, Kemetic monuments? Because Easter is Kemetic. You, beloved, have victory over death. And Asar, being the first of the Westerners, is that deity that was wrongfully killed and resurrected so that we can all have access to heaven. Asar is the symbol of resurrection. Easter, the story of the resurrection of Jesus, is an echo of that story. It's an echo of that story. Everything leading up to this period comes from Kemet. Everything leading up to this period comes from Kemet. And in fact, as we are looking at what we seem to think are the movements of the sun, which is actually our movements around the sun, we can see the sun does peculiar things at 4 times of the year. Those 4 times of the year are equidistant from each other. In many ways, we can say the earth is crucified on the sun, because if we're going in a circle and at 4 times of the year, we're going in a circle and at 4 times of the year, if we're going in a circle and at 4 times of the year, the sun seems to do something peculiar, and they are equidistant by days. If we're going in a circle around the sun, I know it's not quite a circle, it's an ellipse. And at 4 days of the year that are equidistant from each other, we are seeing that we see something peculiar happen. Either the sun stops rising in the sun and we get less light, or the sun gives us more light, or the sun and night are at the same, day and night are at the same measures. Those 4 times a year are days that are very significant for the sun. It can be seen as a cross. Maybe that's why we often see Jesus with the sun on his head and a cross with equal members, by the way, on top of the sun. It is hidden in plain sight. This is astrotheology, first told by your ancient African ancestors. First told by our ancient African ancestors. We're not going to even talk about this right now. I would talk about how we also see the star in the east, and no, not going there yet. But you should know that there are those that seem to know. Look at this painting, Resurrection of Christ from 1881 by Karl Heinrich. When you look at this, this is supposed to be the resurrection of Jesus. And you see the 2 angels, which are likely to be a depiction of the 2 Marys, greeting him as he comes out of the cave. We're seeing that same exact depiction is one that we see in the Kemetic tradition earlier. This is the resurrection of Asar. How's it the resurrection of Asar? Well, this symbol at the bottom here is the Jed. This is the backbone of Asar. It is the symbol for his resurrection. And then we know that he has returned to life because we see the Ankh, the symbol of divine life. His soul has returned to life because these hands that are holding the sun are his Ka, his soul, returning because we are looking at a solar event. That's what we're seeing. By the way, this is also occurring in heaven. Do you notice that there is this darker line here that has the triangles at the edges? This is the glyph for Pet. And it's happening in a rocky place too. Do you notice that the 2 ladies here, by the way, they are also both known as Mary. We see Ast here on the left, Inbet here on the right. And you can see at the bottom that they are in a rocky place. By the way, this rocky place is supposed to be the Akhet, the horizon. And of course, we're seeing that it is the rising of the sun, because these baboons here are symbols of the rising of the sun. This is the original version of this. You are seeing an echo of ancient African traditions when we see Easter. Yes, Anika.
So there was a question a little while ago saying, is this tied to the Holy Trinity because more day and night and equal day and night are 3 states?
I don't think that's why they connected it to a Trinity. I think that they simply connected to a Trinity in the Christian tradition because this story is connected to a Trinity in the African tradition. We say Ast, Asar, and Heru. They are the world's first Trinity, mother, father, and offspring. Now, in the Christian tradition, because of their challenges around women, they removed the woman. In fact, you should know that early Christians argued that the woman was still present in the spirit, that they sometimes called wisdom, that they sometimes called Sophia. They believed that the spirit was feminine. Those people who argued that lost. So we no longer make that claim. But many early Christians believe that the feminine was there. Today we just see a dove, a bird. But you should know that this is how we can recognize that what we are seeing is an echo. By the way, this is from the Papyrus of Ani, or Anui. And you may not notice that even though I'm showing you images, where the images are from are always on the screen. These are sources, right? You can do your own research. Do your own research. And to tell you that we're really seeing this as the resurrection of Asar, first let's look at the description of the women at the tomb in Mark 16, verses 1 to 8. It says, "And when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James and Salome," by the way, this is not Mary, Jesus' mother. This is the other Mary. There are at least 4 Marys that are described in the Christian tradition. Had bought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him. They're talking about the body of Jesus. And very early in the morning of the first day of the week, by the way, they're telling you when this occurred. Very early in the morning of the first day of the... Yelling here. It's occurring at sunrise. They telling you that this is an astrotheological event. And they hid it in the book, and you ain't Pastor didn't tell you this. Why does it take me to tell you this? Let's continue. And very early in the morning of the first day of the week, they came to the sepulchre at the rising of the sun. Did you read this? Are you telling me that after you have knowledge of your Kemetic tradition, you understand this in its greater complexity? That's what you're hearing. Let's continue. And they said amongst themselves, "Who shall roll us away the stone from the door of the sepulchre?" And when they looked, they saw that the stone was rolled away, for it was very great. In other words, someone already rolled this heavy stone away. And entering into the sepulchre, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, clothed in a long white garment, and they were affrighted. And he saith to them, "Be not affrighted. Ye see Jesus of Nazareth, which was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. Behold the place where they laid him. But go your way. Tell his disciples and Peter that he goeth before you into Galilee. There shall ye see him. And he said unto you." And when they went out quickly, they fled from the sepulchre, for they trembled and were amazed. Neither said, please listen to this piece carefully. Neither said anything to any man, for they were afraid. Folks, if these 2 ladies are the only ones that noticed it, and the Bible is telling you they didn't say anything, then who wrote it down? Who wrote it down?
Jesus.
Jesus is crucified. He ain't here. Why did they tell the story this way? Why is it that they're the only ones that see it? It's in a quiet time when no one is there. That's because this is an echo of an earlier story. Now let's look at the story that is connected to the very image of the resurrection of the Ka, the soul of Asar, in the Papyrus of Ani. This comes from 2 places. The Lamentation of Austin in Bethet, in what is often known as Papyrus Berlin. Why is it called Papyrus Berlin? Because they have it in Berlin. I don't know why we're giving the Germans credit for this. Anyway, I got to tell you that this is the name because that's where you're going to do the research. Papyrus Berlin, 3008. Listen to what it says. Recitation of blessings made by the 2 sisters in the house Asar Kentamenti. What does Asar Kentamenti mean? What does Asar Kenti? Sometimes it's called Kentamentiu. What does it mean? I'm not even telling you. You have to tell me. You have to tell me. The great Inter, Lord of Abtu or Abydos. In the 4th month of inundation, 25. They're telling you exactly when this happens, this resurrection happens. When the same is done in every place of Asar, at every feast of his. Understand, they're telling you when this feast of the resurrection of Asar will occur, and it's going to occur in every place. that they worship Asar in all of Kemet. That's what they're telling you. By the way, notice how in the earlier depiction, they told you exactly when the resurrection occurred. Why? Because they are mirroring this. Let's continue. To bless his Ba, steady his body, exalt his Ka, give breath to to the nose of him who lacks breath, to soothe the heart of Ast and in Bedhet. The Greeks call them Isis and Nephthys. Place Horus, the Greeks call him Horus, we call him Heru. Place Heru on his father's throne and give life, stability, dominion to Asar. Life, stability, dominion. You are seeing life, Ankh, and stability, dominion. Can you see that's what they're saying? This is the Ankh and this is the Jed. The Jed is stability, dominion. So they're telling you they're giving this to Asar for his resurrection. Now, Ast speaks. She says, come to your house, come to your house. You are the Yunu, come to your house. Your foes are not. Long, long have I not seen you. My heart mourns you. My eyes seek you. I search for you to see you. So you can see that Ast is in mourning because Asar is dead. He is gone. And she's asking his soul to return. Now notice in the Kemetic tradition, the women are not afraid for the resurrection of Asar. They cause it. Did you hear what I said? That's why you know this is an African story. The women resurrect him. He doesn't resurrect himself. The women resurrect him. In the Christian tradition, they see it and they're afraid. They don't tell nobody. In the African tradition, the women resurrect Asar. Let's continue. And Bedhet speaks. She says, O good king, come to your house. Place your heart. All your foes are not. Your two sisters beside you guard your bier. Call for you in tears. They are in sorrow because he has died. Turn around on your bier. The bier is a place where a body is placed. See the woman. Speak to us. King our Lord, drive all pain from our hearts. Your court of gods and men behold you. Show them your face, King our Lord. Our faces live by seeing your face. So I want you to recognize that what you are seeing is the description of how these ladies resurrect Asar. Let's continue. Now, when this is recited, the place is to be completely secluded. What are you reading now? These are the instructions for the ceremony. Did you hear what I said? This ceremony is done in every place where they honor Asar. They're giving you instructions on how to do it. Here are the further instructions. Now, when this is recited, the place is to be completely secluded. Remember the two ladies approached the tomb and nobody was there? Why? By the way, how could no one be there? They see something and they don't tell anybody. Then all of a sudden, the one of the ladies goes and tells someone. But in one part it says that they told no one. Why are they doing that? Because they are mirroring an earlier story. That is why. It might seem like it doesn't make sense in the biblical narrative. It makes sense if you have the cheat sheet for understanding the concept of resurrection. You have it coming to you. Read it. Let us continue. Now, when this is recited, the place is to be completely secluded, not seen and not heard by anyone except the chief lector priest and the sem priest, the person that speaks the divine words and the one that is in charge of resurrection. One shall bring two women with beautiful bodies. By the way, you should know that the beautiful bodies is usually translated to be what? Translated to be what? The word that is usually used is virgin. These two ladies are supposed to be virgins. I didn't make this up. Let's continue. They shall be made to sit on the ground at the main portal of the hall of appearings. He appears here at a hall in the temple. They have a space where this ceremony occurs called the hall of the appearings. And they are there to sit on the floor. 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 This is an echo of something earlier. Let's continue. Let's continue. On their arms shall be written the names of Austin and Bedhead. So you know that one is Austin, one is in Bedhead. Excuse me. Jars of faience filled with water shall be placed in their right hands. Offerings of loaves made in Menepher. They're even telling you what the jar should be for the ceremony, what should be in the jar, and what the offering should be. Bread. They're making an offering of bread to Asar. Y'all ain't hear me though. Y'all ain't hear me though. Come back to you. Do you not see that the Christian tradition is an echo of the earlier African tradition? They're making offerings of bread made in Memphis, Menepher. Let's continue. That will be in their left hands, and their face shall be bowed. To be done in the third hour of the day. The third hour of the day. We're talking about 3 a.m. 3 a.m. That's when this ceremony is done, at 3 a.m. Remember the resurrection of Jesus. Why am I talking about the resurrection of Jesus? That's a new story. But they did say it was done in the very early morning around sunrise. Okay. And also in the 8th hour of the day. Why the 8th hour of the day? I think it's because the 8th hour day, because most people ain't up at 3 o'clock. Slackers. Get up early and do the ceremony. So they do it again at 8 a.m. Let's continue. You shall not slack in reciting this book in the hour of the festival. Did I not say they knew you were going to be a slacker? The instructions say, don't be a slacker, do this. That's what the instructions say. I am telling you that what you are seeing is that Easter is an echo. Is that Easter is a retelling of the story that you first told in your greatness, in your brilliant ebony skin. When you were in control of the world in the land of Kemet, you told the world its most critical stories. And there's nothing wrong with your children retelling those stories. The problem is they're telling the stories and not even including you, beloved. They've called you a pagan. They called you a demon worshiper. When you were the ones that taught them these fundamental principles. Now when you practice it in the ancient way, you are evil. You are vilified. That is what has occurred. But I know I am so honored to be speaking to those who have memory of the greatness of their foreparents. On this day, that most in this world will know as Easter, I need you to tell people that this is an ancient African story. Some of you are going to say, Jabari, did you give me the sources? I gave you the sources. Did you write them down? Someone's going to say, Jabari, where's the source? Where can we tell you the story of Austin the Star? It was on the screen. This story of the resurrection of Jesus is a retelling. And I don't mean this with no disrespect in my heart whatsoever. It's a poor retelling of the story of the resurrection of Asar. Because in our description, we know that we are Asar. This isn't supposed to be describing a historic event. It's supposed to be describing an ever-occurring event. That's what it's supposed to be describing. And so I have to ask you, on a day that most people are thinking about resurrection, what practitioner of the ancient African sciences, what Kemetic, what should those people who understand this tradition this practice in its highest form do today? If you are the grandmother and grandfather of civilization, what should you do when the young people are doing stuff and they don't understand what they're doing? Should you not teach today? By the way, would grandma and grandpa teach you with hatred and anger? Not normally. They would teach you with love and care. That's what your task is today. And as you're thinking about that transition that we have from the land of the physical world to the land of the everlasting ethereal world, should you not be thinking of those ancestors that have gone before us and paying homage to them? Should you not be thinking of the things you must do in order to become a golden soul on a day like today? Should you not light a candle remembering the ancestors and focusing on the renewal of the world and renewal of ourselves? Remember, you are the one that can see behind the curtain. The rest of those that exist in our world, unfortunately, are those who simply sit in the audience, in front of the curtain, watching the drama as it plays out on the stage. The drama which you penned yourself. Commit to you, this is a day that you should be in glory. This is a day that you should come forward and help our people understand who we are and what we've done. And I ask that you do that today as you give love and care to those who love and care for you. With that, I say the divine force in me greets the divine force in you. Please, please have this be a magnificent day. Recognize that you are on your Asar journey. Recognize you are on your Asar journey, that you are coming into existence. This comes from the Rayu Pert and Maroon. It says, "Here I come, that I may overthrow my adversaries on earth. Through my dead body, though my dead body be buried, let me come forth today and walk upon my own legs. Let me have the feet of the glorified. I am a soul, and the soul is divine. It is the eternal force. I am Kepera, the self-produced upon his mother's thigh." This is where you recognize what you must do today. Divine force in me greets the divine force in you. Please, let's go with our final affirmation. Is there a lot of conversation? Usually when Anika gets up at the end, she goes, "Woo," that means that it's hot in the chat.
There's
That's
still a lot more questions.
Questions that I should answer, or?
Yeah, but I don't know.
You could, well, tell me. What?
There was a question about, is there an androgynous deity in the Kemetic tradition?
Yes, there are a few. There are a few deities that are both male and female. Obviously, the one that is most recognized is Hapi, the symbol of fertility of the Hapi of the river that is now known as the Nile. That's the one that's most clearly described as androgynous. Yes. Are there others? A lot of other questions?
I can't remember them.
Okay. Well, folks, I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you got into a robust conversation. I hope that you're going to do your work and you're going to do your research, right? You have no idea how many, I mean, this description here probably has, this discussion today probably has upwards of 30 to 40 sources. You should do the work yourself. You're not going to go to church and listen to pastor, he's going to give you sources. You know, and when you ask for a source, he's going to say, you're asking that because you don't believe. Just believe. So you need to do your work now. Okay, please.
Really quick, a few announcements. For those of you who are still interested in traveling with us, remember, we're going to both Kemet and to Ghana. You can choose to go to one or the other or both. You must get your monies in prior to May. So you're getting to the point where it's a complete cutoff point, and we will not be able to accept any more people traveling with us. So if you are interested in traveling, please visit our website, www.centerformaat, CENTERFOR maat.com. And that's where you can go ahead and start making your payments towards the trip if you're interested in traveling with us. We'll be leaving from July 31st and returning August 19th for both trips. Okay.
For both trips.
Yeah,
That's if we're taking both
both
trips.
You're going to be Kemet and Ghana.
Right, but you can do either. You can do Kemet, or you can do Ghana, or you can do both. We would love for you to do both. That's the reason why I put them together, because we think that you doing it both will shed some light on certain things.
All right, and as mentioned earlier, for those of you who are still interested in initiation, that will start in 2 weeks on Monday after.
We'll finalize that with the Wenwet. Yeah, we'll finalize that with the Wenwet. But you're going to get announcements very soon.
Okay, so we're going to end today with our favorite affirmation. Also, one of the first prayers found in the Reu and Pertet Meru and Ger, which is the chapter coming forth from day to night. And it is called the Amasu. So if you can stand in the pose of adoration with me and repeat it after me in the ancient language of our ancestors, and then again in English. Amasu and Pater.
Amasu and Pater.
Sauksu.
Sauksu.
Ementra.
Ementra.
And Pater.
And Pater.
Autu.
Autu.
Aura.
Aura.
Maketipa.
Maketipa.
Herura.
Herura.
Give yourself to the One Most High.
Give yourself to the One Most High.
Keep yourself daily for the divine.
Keep yourself daily for the divine.
And do it tomorrow.
And do it tomorrow.
Just as you did it today.
Just as you did it today.
Dwell in Tur.
Dwell in Tur.
Thank you to the divine.
Thank you to the divine.
Thank you to all of you.
And thank you to all of you. Folks, please go forth and have a really amazing day. Celebrate your family, but also educate them. And we will see you soon. All right. Shalom. Go forth in divine balance. Peace.